Hello and welcome to another video on this channel. And in this particular video, I'm going to walk you through programming, which is the basics of being a software engineer. But we are going to do that specifically through web development. So becoming a software engineer through web development. Okay, so let's get started. So what is programming in itself? For that, you are very new to this, you have zero knowledge. Programming is writing instructions that a computer can understand. Okay. And here we have dummy code and what serial code is like example of what code would look like. Sample kind of code for code. And again, programming is step-by-step instruction that you give a computer that the computer understands and it can process it and execute it in an order that you decide. That is what programming is, giving computers instructions. So now there's multiple programming languages and different languages do different things. And some languages do many things. Some languages do more things than other languages. For example, Python is kind of like an overall language that you can use for data analysis, you can use for automation, you can use for writing backend. And at some point, these languages have frameworks. There's a more developed version of the original language that makes it more easy to use, that could do more complex things without writing as much code. You get some kind of modules, some kind of extra features. Okay, so again, there's Python, there's JavaScript. JavaScript is one of the three languages of the web. In a bit, we'll talk a little bit more about that. But JavaScript is another programming language. Then you have Swift or Kotlin. Now, these are languages that are used to build apps. Swift is for iOS, Kotlin is for Android apps. Then you have C++ and C Sharp. These are other languages that used to build apps as well, desktop applications, and as you see, it is performance heavy. So each language has what it does, why you don't want to learn it, and what the its own kind of syntax. Syntax is the word for it, which is just how you write it. But at its core, these programming languages all share the same basics. That's for every language, you're going to want to know how do you write a loop in that language? How do you write a conditional? Sorry about that. How do you write a conditional statement in that language? But those are the shared similarities. So if you are very proficient at Python, if you are learning JavaScript, you would not have to start learning loop again, because you already understand the concept of what that particular thing does, and that those things are the same across all the languages. And as usual, this will just and I think consequently there'll just be pages like this that just kind of uh refreshing. Write a line of code, refresh the page, and see it change immediately. No other starting point makes that as visible this fast. Now, this is why we are learning programming, software engineering through web development, because it's the easiest and fastest to get ready with, in the sense that you really just write something and you refresh and reflect, unlike other languages where it might have to compile, you might have to process, you wait a bit. Also, some of them display in the terminal, and a lot you're not, if you've never had any tech experience, I don't expect that you'll be familiar with getting responses or feedback from a terminal. It's going to feel very awkward, rather than in a browser that everybody interacts with. So that's just for that buttressing this point. So now, a website is essentially one HTML file. This is true, and we are just going to. I'm going to, like I said, these videos are going to be practicals and presentations like this, and the practical starts here right now. This is my desktop. I want to create a website right now. How do I do that? You create a new folder. You can name the folder anything. So let me just name it websites. like this. And now that I've created this folder, getting just creating a folder, and then inside the folder you create a new file. Now ideally you just do something like this and then you just click open new file. But because of the operating system I'm using, I can't create a new file like that, but I'm just going to do this. I'm going to do it using the terminal. So on your Windows laptop, just create new file. The significant part is the file type and the name of the file. Okay, so I'm just going to create a new file. This is the exact same thing as you creating a new file. And then I'm going to name this file index.html. Now, it could be anything.html, right? It just needs to end with the file extension is just that.html. So this could be a.html, leniac.html. And just for fun, I'm going to create another one. Touch leniac.html. So now we have these two files, and currently these are just normal files. And you see when I open it, it's just going to display like this. It's a blank file because there's nothing inside of it. Now, next, you want to populate this file. You want to put things inside this file. Those are the things that makes it an HTML file. And there's a tool for that. It's VS Code. It's called an IDE, Integrated Development Environment. It's basically just like when I open the file now with my normal text editor, you see just opens blank like this. Now it's kind of like this same environment but on steroids. It gives you a lot of features that you could do with it. And I'm just going to open it. I already have it installed. So open with it's Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to this is it. So if you don't have this, you'd have to download it, right? So I've opened it and this is it here. I had something else open before, which is what you are seeing here. I'll close those. And you can see it is my file inside the website folder and the index.html. So part of the things, the features that VS Code gives us is emmet. Now emmet is just shorthand basically that lets you do things like this. Look at that. With just some clicks, I have this entire thing, which I would have to manually type out. And again, I usually recommend that you familiarize yourself with this. I'm going to do a little explanation of what you are looking at, and kind of like separate it out so it makes a little bit more sense. But I'm not going to go too in depth in this particular video. I'm just going to space it out for you like this. Okay, so this is HTML. This is the syntax of HTML. This is HTML in its rawest form. That's what we are looking at here. So there's this line, then there's this part, there's your HTML, and then inside the HTML we have two parts. We have this part and we have this part. That's our HTML. And now if I save this, if we come back to our file, you can see now it's not just looking like a blank file. Now we can see that it looks like this website icon, which means when I open it, instead of opening in my text editor, it's opening as a website. And if I put something here like I am a man and save this, I come back here and refresh, you see it displays on the website. So this is our, you can see it updated, and this is the genesis of our HTML creation. This is our website. Again, remember a website is just an HTML file at its core, at its most simplest form. The website is an HTML file. So I'm going to close this and get us back to our slide. So back to our presentation. A website is essentially one HTML file, and we just verified that. That's the whole starting point. A plain text file your browser knows how to read and turn into a page. Now, web development at its core, I'm going to remind you that this video is about becoming a programmer, software engineer through web development, and it's a part that I recommend. I've highlighted why earlier that it's the most you like you just saw. You just with creating a folder, putting a file inside that folder, putting some things inside of it, we immediately get started. We can modify it. You put something, so it's very exciting and extremely beginner friendly. Extremely. Okay. So at its core, to create a fully functional website, you just need three technologies, and these are those technologies: HTML, which I just showed, CSS, which has its own use, and then JavaScript, which is a programming language that I mentioned earlier on. So HTML is the core structure of the website, is the backbone. Without HTML, there's no website. Every other thing, CSS, JavaScript, builds on top of HTML. So that is how it is. So you need to get very, very familiar with HTML. Then afterwards, you need to know what CSS is. CSS is used to be like you can compare this to this site we created just now. This is beautiful. There's colors, there's gradients, there's coloring, there's different fonts. This looks a lot more fun than what we created a couple of minutes ago, seconds ago. So that is what CSS does. That is what we use to make it so beautiful. And JavaScript is the logic part of the site. That's what happens when you click a button, you know, as you scroll, is there any animation going on? The more complex things in a website are done with JavaScript, and JavaScript can sync, like work together with CSS to, like I mentioned, animations before. So you could do really complex things on your website. And there's this analogy that I like to use. That's if we were looking at the web system as like the human system, where we have like skeletal system, muscular system, and let's say brain or neurological system. HTML will be the skeleton in the sense that every other thing builds on top of it. Then CSS will be like the muscular system, the flesh that is attached to the skeleton, the bones itself. Then JavaScript, the logic, the brain part of it. So JavaScript will be the brain, CSS will be the flesh, and HTML will be the skeleton. Just in case that helps you with making it a little bit more relatable. So wow, look at that. HTML is skeleton. So this is HTML. These things that you see here are called tags, right? So and what I showed you before, like I said, is the syntax of HTML. That's the baseline, the core structure. Soon I'll release another video that is just on HTML, where we will get a little bit more familiar with these things and understand them more in depthly. But for now, just know that this is called a tag. This is also called a tag. This is another tag. This is the paragraph tag. This is the heading one tag. This is the button tag. Okay, so yeah. HTML is skeleton. It doesn't decide what anything looks like. It just decides what exists on the page and in what order it shows up. So that's each one is going to display on top of this paragraph, and the paragraph is going to display on top of this button. And if the button was up here, the button will display before the H1 and like that. And CSS is the skin. I love my analogy. CSS is the skin, same HTML underneath. CSS is what decides the color, spacing, fonts, and layout on top of it. So this is what CSS looks like. So if wanted to design this button, like make it beautiful, what we do is we put what we want to style. That's this now would be like the syntax of CSS, so to say. So we want to style the button, so we put the button here, and then inside of these curly braces, we put our style. What properties do we want to change, and what are the values of those properties that we are changing? So we are making the background a different color, changing the color to white. the default color. If you noticed it in that last um that last noticed it in the quick preview I showed. Text color or anything would be black by default. So changing it to white, border radius 8px. Border radius is kind of like this curving. So because everything displays like a box, ideally, but to give it this kind of curve, that's border radius. And again, all these things will be in-depthly spoken about in the future. So CSS is what decides the color, spacing, fonts, and layout on top of it. Now JavaScript is what wakes it up. HTML and CSS build something that just sits there. JavaScript is what responds when somebody actually clicks something. Okay, like I said, it's the logic part, the reactive part. It's basically the brain. You know. So now for that same button, let's say we want to check if somebody does something. If somebody does something of clicking, sorry about that. Again, this is JavaScript. This is actual JavaScript code. So add event listener. As you are listening for the event of a click, if there's a click, do this. If there's a click, do this. Do this. That's how you actually look at it. So let's move on. All three together. Wow, this is beautiful. And I wanted to recreate this, but no, not in this, not in this tutorial. But in the next one, definitely. So all three together, structure, style, and behavior. Same button, all three technologies layer on top of each other. This is what almost every interface you use is doing underneath. So with our HTML, we are able to have this. Remember, this is the H1, this is the paragraph, and this is the button. And then we named it index.html. That's what's showing here. Currently, this file name is techtrueweb.html. That's the name of this file, which is what's showing here. So we made the text color to be white. We did some changes. The border radius on the bottom. That's what this is. And if we click the button, if we clicked it, it should actually display something. Although not, this is kind of like a picture version of it. So now, where do we go from next? What do we do next? So there'll be an HTML and CSS video, where you learn structure and style properly, not just a summarized version. Then we deal with JavaScript, the logic, the basics of it. What do you need to really know about JavaScript? Then work on frameworks. Now, frameworks, as I kind of hinted or slightly discussed earlier on, are more worked on versions, like advanced versions of just the base technology. Like React and Next.js are built on JavaScript. They are modifications of JavaScript, and it kind of makes your flow easier and quicker when you build, because you have things like state, context. These are all things that you get familiar with when we get to that point. And also, I'm going to walk you through working with CMS. CMS, content management system, are things like WordPress, Drupal, Shopify, all of those things. How to build sites with them. Because it's nice to have an all-around web functioning knowledge, and React Native. React Native is for apps. It is my choice, my tech stack for building apps. Okay. So we are going to also work on that with time as we move on this channel. Now, something to just sit with, like a real project here is something you can actually show people. That is what I'm working on. That's why I intend to build that. Every course that is done here is something that you could recreate on your own and show someone that, oh, I did this, I learned it from this video. Or maybe you don't say that, maybe you just did it. Not just code that sits on your laptop, actual pages that you can deploy. Deployment is something I'll mention actually after in the HTML and CSS video, to get you started, because when you have these things, all these sites, this HTML page that we created, and this one as well, is only accessible on my own device. As you can't see this website, you can't view this, because I've not deployed it. So when you deploy it, deployment is basically putting your website online so that it's accessible by everybody. So that is the end of this presentation. Thank you for staying to the end, and like and comment the video.